Yahrzeit, good morning. I'm sorry that I can't be there with you in person, but Baruch Hashem, at least the zechus to be able to learn together virtually. We want to begin by thanking all of our sponsors for this morning's share, to thank our TORAH sponsors, for our annual TORAH sponsor, for Tafshin Pei Hey, the Tilson Mishpach of Am Yisroel. Sorry for dedicating all of the shiurim and drashos this year as a zechus for besuros, tovos for Am Yisroel. Our TORAH sponsors for Adar, Lavine, the tovos, Teri and Steve Zinn, loving memory of Teri's father, Dr. Kahn, Tzvi, Hersch, Ben Yosef, HaKohen, the Ziv, Lavine, and Behrman families in memory of Mr. Willian Ziv, Zev Shmuel, Ben Yisroel. And our week of learning, Paul and Kathy Pollack in memory of Paul's grandfather, Zechariah, Ben Zechariah, Zechariah. We open the merit of our Talmud Torah, Din Shamos Lahavan Aliyah, and the family Zainacham. And with that, we have a ridiculously and overwhelmingly exciting daf ahead of us today. Today's daf is Pei Beis. And Baruch Hashem, over Shabbos, we were able to get to the bottom of Pei Aleph Amud Beis 81b, and we are at the Mishnah on the bottom. Hagoniv es hakisva. So if one steals a kisva, so again Rashi points out Mefarish b'Gemara. We'll see exactly in the Gemara what that is. V'mekalel b'kosim, or one who goes ahead and curses. Now, mekalel b'kosim literally means curses with sorcery. So someone uses some type of sorcery in order to create a curse. We'll see exactly again in the Gemara what it means. Va'abal aramis, or one who goes ahead and has relations with a non-Jewish woman. Kana and Poginbo, zealots have the ability to go ahead and take this person's life. Now Rashi points out there, now this is we're going to spend a lot of time on this chavra, so don't leave sheer just yet. So Rashi says, Aramis bas ovid kochavim. First to a non-Jewish woman, ovid avodas kochavim. Kana and Poginbo, Rashi says, B'nei Adam ksherin hamiskanen kin asal shal makom. So who is a kanoi? Who is a zealot? This is someone, first of all, himself who's a kosher, someone himself who's an upstanding Jewish person, hamiskanen kin asal shal makom, who really feel almost like they feel the pain of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Literally, again, they fight the battle of the Ribono Shalom. So they're able to kill this person. So if Kanoim see someone they see a Jew committing an act of immorality with a non-Jewish woman, right, and they see a mamish engaged in the act, they're allowed to go ahead and take his life. But again, they're only permitted to kill him if they catch him in the act. But afterwards, ultimately, again, they're not permitted to go ahead and do so. And interestingly enough, this is not something that's given over to Beis Din either. Rather, again, this is unique. The Rashi calls it a halacha l'Moshe Misinai. We'll see the source of it. Halacha l'Moshe Misinai, that a Baal Aramis, if a man goes and has relations with a non-Jewish woman, a zealot is permitted to go ahead and take his life. Again, much more drasha required on that. Okay, Kohen sheshimish b'tumah. If you have a Kohen who practiced in the Beis Hamikdash, he's in the Beis Hamikdash in a state of tumah, so his fellow Kohanim, they don't bring him to Beis Din. Rather, what do? The young Kohanim take him out of the Azara, out of the courtyard of the Beis Hamikdash. Essentially, they hit him over the head. They kill him. They could go ahead and literally translated, split his skull with gizrin, which are again pieces of wood. Gizrin Rashi says pikoin. Okay, we'll see pieces of wood. Zar sheshimish b'mikdash, and if you have a non-Kohen who served in the Beis Hamikdash, Rabbi Akiva or b'chenek, Rabbi Akiva says his punishment is with chenek. The Chum say no, it's misa b'dei shamayim. He's killed at the hands of heaven. All right, so chavra, I really like a lot to unpack in this Mishnah. So let's go. Says the Gemara, my kisva. So the first Mishnah taught me was that if somebody steals a kisva, so again, the Chaim Yisrael Pogibos. What's a kisva? Amar Yehuda Kli Sharis. This refers to a service utensil. So kisva is a utensil used in the Beis Hamikdash for Beis Hamikdash service. Techinu Omer Ves Kashas Hanesach Ve'Reicha Remiza. So again, the pasuk backs that up. But where do you find this idea that if somebody goes ahead and steals a utensil, service utensil from the Beis Hamikdash, that kana and pogim, that someone's allowed to kill them? So the pasuk says, "V'lo yavo liros kibala as hakodesh v'amesu." So it's a little bit of a play on words. So remember again, this is actually talking about technically about the Levim who are obligated to transport the Aron. So the halacha was that the Aron had to be covered by the Kohanim before the Levim would take hold of it to move it. But the Gemara darshans over here, "V'lo yavo liros kibala as hakodesh v'amesu." Literally again, you should not stand idly by while the Beis Hamikdash is being diminished. Kibbalas Kodesh Beis Hamikdash is being diminished. Rather, again, those who are causing the diminution of the Beis Hamikdash, in this case, through stealing of a kli sharis, v'amesu, ultimately should be put to death. So incredible. So that's the first case. A person who goes ahead and steals an object from the base. It's a service utensil. Chayiv misa. Can I pogibo? Next, the Gemara says, "V'makala b'kosem," one who goes down and literally again curses with sorcery. What is this? Tan Rabbi Yosef, Yakia kosem es kosmo. A person says the sorcery should curse the one who gave the cursed sorcery its power. So it's a reference to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. So a person curses the Ribono Shel Olam with the sorcery. Rabbana v'yitem Rabbi Amari Amri Yakehu kosem lo ulakono ulamikno. Ultimately, again, the kosem, the sorcery, should go ahead and curse again to its creator and the one who endowed it with its power. So therefore, again, the case of kosem is a person curses HaKadosh Baruch Hu chas v'shalom with sorcery. Okay? Next, they're both saying, this is now going to be the bulk of our sugya, bolaramis. So of course, the one that really catches our attention dramatically is that the Mishnah says that if a man goes ahead and has relations with a non-Jewish woman, kana in poginbo, so a kana is zealot. Now again, remember, so we defined what a zealot is. A zealot is someone himself who's an adam kasher, right? As Rashi pointed out over here, the lashon was b'nei adam ksherin, person be adam kasher, and their motivation is totally to defend the honor of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. So if they catch a Jewish man in this act, that has to be in the act, they're allowed to take his life. If it's after the fact, they're not allowed to do anything, and the truth is, Beis can't do anything either. All right, so let's analyze. So we'll say top of pay base. So 82a. So Rav Kahn asked the following kasha of Rav. Lo pagu bo kanoin mahu. What happens if, let's say there were no zealots around? You were zealotless. There were no zealots around. And so the Jewish man committed this avera with this non-Jewish woman. So what is his punishment under those circumstances? So the Gemara says, in she Rav ligimare. So Rav forgot. He forgot the halacha. He couldn't remember the halacha of this particular circumstance. He forgot. So the Gemara says, Akrayhu Rav Kahana b'chamir. That night, Rav Kahana had a dream. And in his dream, he saw the following pasuk. Bagda Yehuda v'to'eva nasta b'yisrael b'Yushalayim ki chilal Yehuda kodesh Hashem asher ahav u'bal bas el nechar. So he quotes over here the pasuk from Malachi, where the pasuk literally says again, Yehuda rebelled against Hashem, engaged in an abomination, or an abomination occurred within Klal Yisrael and Yerushalayim, because Yehuda profaned the Kodesh that was loved, Ubal Bas El Nechar, and had relations again with the daughter of an El Nechar, an alien god. All right, so a lot to unpack. So this was the dream. So in his dream, Rav Kahana saw a dream. So again, just to follow the progression over here. Someone asked Rav, what happens if a Jewish man has relations with a non-Jewish woman and no one caught him in the act? So again, no one's allowed to kill him, obviously. Beis can't even do anything. What's his punishment? Ex post facto, what's his punishment? Rav couldn't remember. That night, Rav Kahana has a dream. And in the dream, he sees this pasuk. So what happens? Amarle, hachi ikarim. So Rav Kahana told Rav the dream. Now Rav said, as a result of that dream, Adkre Rav Ligmare. Rav remembered the teaching. He remembered the ruling. And he apparently again the pasuk jogged his memory, because we're going to see the drush comes from the pasuk. Bagda Yehuda. Yehuda rebelled. What's that? This refers to idolatry. V'cheinu Omer. So too it says, Bagadatem bi beis Yisrael Hashem v'to'eva nesta b'Yisrael. What does it mean? An abomination was done within Klal Yisrael or Yerushalayim. Zeh mishkav zachar. This refers to homosexual activity. V'cheinu Omer ves zachar lo tishkav mishkavei isha. To'evahi. Kichila Yehuda Kodesh Hashem, because Yehuda has profaned the sanctity of Hashem. Zu zona. This refers ultimately again to a zona, to a harlot. V'chinu Omer lo yeh kadesh. So again, so the Navi over here, Malachi, is taking Klal Yisrael to task for all these different things that they've done. Lastly, Ubal Bas El Nechar, he had relations literally again with the daughter of an alien god. What does that refer to? Zeh Haba Ala Kusis. This refers to a Jew who has relations with a non-Jewish woman. That's what it means to have relations with the daughter of an alien god. To have relations with a non-Jewish woman. Uksib Hashem, what does it say afterwards? Yachreis Hashem leish asher ya'asena va'ona me'elokei Yaakov umagish mincha la'Hashem tzivakos. So this is the punishment. So what's the punishment? Here we go. Im Talmud Chacham, so if the Jew who committed this transgression had relations with a non-Jewish woman is a Talmud Chacham, so then what? Lo yiyeh lo er b'chachamim va'ona b'talmidim. His son will not be a Talmud Chacham. So again, it literally translated, so if it's a Talmud Chacham who had relations with this non-Jewish woman, then it means literally again, his son will not be amongst those who are awakened, right? Those who are bright in the Talmidim, and nor will he be able to converse with the Talmidei Chachamim. So again, the punishment for a Talmid Chacham who has relations with a non-Jewish woman, ultimately, again, if he won't have a son who's a Talmid Chacham, then we'll say that, well, that's one more line, in Kohen hu, and if he's a Kohen, lo yeh lo ben magish mincha LaHashem tzavakos, and if he's a Kohen, his son will not continue in his Kohanic path. Literally, again, his son will not bring a carbon mincha. So I'll say, so I just point out something interesting. First of all, a couple of very interesting ideas. Number one, it's fascinating to see that Yirah is talking about a Talmid Chacham who has relations with a non-Jewish woman, which teaches you something amazing, that no person is above temptation, and no person is above sin. A person can be a great Talmid Chacham, learning Torah, Baruch Hashem, Yom V'Layla, day and night. But a man is a man, a person is, a human being is a human being. And we all have our weaknesses, and we all have our wants, our lusts, our desires, and it's so important to be real about these things. You know, sometimes we like to think, we saw this last week a little bit, that certain things are beyond us, about I would never do that. Yes, you would. Yes, you would. Given the opportunity, we would do a lot of different things. And even the greatest of Talmidei Chachamim, unfortunately, could fall into the web of immorality. Really important yesod. The other interesting idea is if you notice a pattern. So if it's a Talmid Chacham who has relations with a non-Jewish woman, his son will not be a Talmid Chacham. If it's a Kohen, his son's not going to be a Kohen. Meaning what? That I think it's specifically by immorality. Immorality imprints itself on a mishpacha, and specifically imprints itself on children. An immoral father cannot raise a holy son. And this is irrelevant. The son knows about what the father did, doesn't know about that. It's a din in ruchnius, that there are certain things that fundamentally taint who and what we are, and immorality is one of them. So a man goes ahead and engages in this type of illicit relationship. And again, what's fascinating about this is, right, it's not one of like the arayos that's punishable by mis or by something else. Remember, again, this is kano and poginbo, but if the kanoi doesn't get the person in the middle of the act, there's no follow-up from it. There's no follow-up from it, at least in Beis Din level. But yet again, you see that this level of moral trespass is so profound that it imprints on my children. So I could be the greatest Talmid Chacham in the world, but if I do this, my kid's not going to be a Talmid Chacham. I could be a Kohen, but if I do this, my kid's not going to... And again, it's not a punishment. I think it's a result. If I am wrapped up in immorality, as manifest by myself, that I'm having relations with these other women, by definition, that is going to impact my ability to raise an inspired family. It's not a punishment. It's just the reality. It's just the fact. It's just the way that it works. Such an incredible Gemara. Whoever has relations with a non-Jewish woman is as if he's marrying idolatry. Because the pasuk says, "Ubal bas el mechar." The pasuk says he has relations with the daughter of an alien god. Bas yeshol el mechar doesn't have all the zara have a daughter. This refers to a Jewish man who has relations with a non-Jewish woman. Kasov, this is incredible. Kasov al gal galasa shel Yehoyakim zos va'od acheres. So remember again, one of the kings of Klal Yisrael, of Yehuda, was a man, Yehoyakim. Yehoyakim, unfortunately, again, was an Oved Avodah Zarah, who, unfortunately, again, led Klal Yisrael in a very deleterious path. Part of his punishment was that the Navi told him, you're not going to be buried in a normal way. So it was written on the skull of Yehoyakim, Zos va'od acheres. This will happen to you, and another thing will happen to you. Now we'll see what that means in just a moment. So the Gemara tells an incredible story. Zekino Rabbi Preda, Ashkechahu Gulgulasa, the Havishadja B'Shari Yushalayim. So the grandfather, or the father, well, Zekino usually means the grandfather of Rabbi Preda, found the skull. And the skull ultimately again was cast to the side by the gates of Yerushalayim. And on the skull was written the phrase, Zos this and something else. Now, he didn't realize that this was the skull of the king Yehoyakim. So what did he do? Kavra. He buried the skull. He figured it's got to be a Jew by the gates of Yerushalayim. He buried the skull. V'hadar navog. Kavra v'hadar navog. So every time he buried it, the skull raised back out of the ground. He buried it again, it raised back out of the ground. Okay? Amar hai gulgulasa shel Yehoyakim. So he realized this must be the skull of Yehoyakim. D'chsiv bei kvuras chomer yikavar schov v'hashlech mahalal l'shari Yushalayim. Because the Navi said to Yehoyakim, the Navi Yirmiyah said, you are going to be buried like a donkey. Just like nobody takes the time to bury a donkey's carcass, they just throw it by the side. So too your body is going to be thrown by the side, not buried. But nevertheless, the grandfather Rabbi Preda said, Amar Malkahu Valav Orach Ara Levazuye But nevertheless, again, he said, you know what? It's not right. Even though Yehoiakim deserves, all this stuff, at the end of the day, he's still a king. And as a king, he deserves some level of kavod in the way that his remains are treated. So what happened? This is interesting. So what did the grandfather of Rabbi Preda do? So listen to this. So shakli karcha b'shiroi v'osve b'sifta. So he went ahead and he wrapped it. He realized he can't bury it because every time he buried it, it came back out of the ground. So what did he do? He took a piece of silk, wrapped it in a piece of silk, and put it in a box. Okay, aside divisu chazise. So what happens? So the grandfather of Rabbi Preda, his wife came home, and she said, that's interesting. There's a skull in silk in a box. Okay, so she decides to talk to her neighbor about it. So she said it. They were talking. The neighbors were talking. This must be the skull of your husband's first wife. Well, so apparently, again, this marriage was a second marriage, right? The grandfather of Rabbi Preda was married before, and the neighbor says to the current of Rabbi Preda, this must be the skull of his first wife. And what happens? And clearly, your husband cannot forget about his first wife. So what did the wife do? Shagarta letanura the kalsa. She took the skull, threw it into the oven, and it was incinerated. Kiyasa, when the grandfather of Rabbi Preda came back, Amar Hainu Dechsevi Luya Zos. He said, now I understand the meaning of what was written on the skull. Zos, number one, Yehoiakim, you won't be buried normally. And number two, again, clearly, ultimately, his skull was incinerated. So back to the kusis. Beisdino shechashmonai gazru. So the Bezdin of Chashmonaim, remember this is the Chashmonaim, the Chanukah story. So the Bezdin of Chashmonaim, they were Kohanim. Their Bezdin made a gzera. What was the gzera? Habala kusis chayiv aleh mishum nashga. If a man has relations with a kusis, a non-Jewish woman, he is chayiv because of nashga. Four things. Now, by the way, what's nashga? We'll see in just a moment. So nashga is, nun is nida. Now this is interesting because remember again, the halachos of nida apply to a Jewish woman, don't apply to a non-Jewish woman. But again, remember, the Beis and Chashmonaim were trying very hard to ensure that Jewish men would not be having relations with non-Jewish women for a variety of reasons, morality, intermarriage, all these things. So they kind of threw the book at this relationship. So they said, if a Jewish man has relations with a non-Jewish woman, you're chayav al tzilchos nida. She's a nida. Number two, shifcha. For Jewish men having relations with the shifcha, which is a doraisa. Number three, gimel, goya. There's a biblical prohibition against having relations with a non-Jewish woman. And ultimately, aleph is eshes ish. If she's married, ultimately it's adultery. Okay? Kiyasa Ravin ar mishum nashgaz. Ravin came along and he said it's not nashga, but rather it's nashgaz. Again, he agreed on the first three. Nida shivcha goya zona. He takes out Eshes Ish, married woman, and puts in Zona. Why the distinction? Because apparently the Kusim were not so makbid on marriage. They were immoral, and therefore they didn't really have monogamous relationships. Therefore, it didn't make sense to put Eshes Ish in there. Instead, it makes more sense to put in Zona. The Idach, the first opinion would say, Nashayu Badai La Mefkuri. Okay, it might be true they didn't have like a formal construct of marriage, like we have Kiddushin and Nisuin, but Lamaisa, they still had an institution of marriage. And they still had monogamous relationships. Therefore, if a man has relations with a married kusis, it's Eshes Ish. Okay, incredible. Okay, so we'll say, so now we're beginning to kind of, fill this out a little bit. So what we see over here is the severity of a Jewish man having relations with a non-Jewish woman. Beis din Chashmonaim, nashkaz, other beis din nashka, either way, or nashka, beis Chashmonaim, nashkaz, other one, either way, very bad. To the point that the Mishnah says that if Kainam, a zealot, as we defined in the Mishnah, catches a Jewish man in the act, he's permitted to go out and take his life. So the Gemara now says, by the way, the Gemara says, Amrav Chista, Habal Limloch. If somebody comes to ask this Shaila, Ein Morin Lo. We do not actually instruct them to do this. So Rashi says over here, Amrav Chista, Kanoi Habal Limloch Bebezdin, B'shas Ma'aseh, Yifka Bo, Ein Morin Lo Shelo Nemra El Mekane Me'atzmo. This is very interesting. So let's say Ruvain is having relations with a kusis. Okay, and now what happens? Shimon. Now Shimon is a kanoi, right? He's got a badge. Ask me anything, I'm a kanoi, right? He's a kanoi, and he shows up in Bezdin. And he says, Bezdin, Reuven is having relations with the kusis. Can I kill him? So the halacha is Bezdin does not instruct him to do this. What Rashi points out over here is the concept of kanoi and pogin bo is a person acting motivated by their own sense of religious zealotry. And I will say, I can't tell you again how incredibly dangerous this is. Because remember, again, the person who's going to carry this out has to make sure that he is mamish at tzaddik, that he's a kosher, and that he's doing this for all the right reasons. That's why the halacha says we don't. This is halacha l'Moshe Misinai. We're going to learn this from Pinchas. That's where this comes from. But we don't pass. In other words, we don't instruct people to do this. So if someone comes to Beis Din and asks, it says, "Should I do this?" We tell them, "No, don't do it. Don't do it." This is a unique halacha. If someone acts of their own volition and satisfies the criteria, they're not liable for it, right? But l'maisa, Beis Din will never instruct someone to actually do this. So the Gemara says, if somebody asks, right, literally somebody comes to Beis Din, right, Shimon comes to Beis Din, Reuven is mamish having relations with a kusis, and I'm a kanoi, so can I do it? No. He's telling him, no, do not do it. So not only that, so remember again, we're going to get to this in just a moment. The paradigmatic example of this was, or not the paradigmatic example, the episode where this happened is the story of Pinchas. So remember again, Zimri was a tribal prince of Shimon, had relations with Cosby, a Midianite princess. They engaged actually in a public act of immorality, and Pinchas killed Zimri. Pinchas kills Zimri and Cosby, kills them both. So this is the story that gives rise to this concept of Haboel Aramis or Haboel Kusis, Kanoin Pogin Bo. It's based on Pinchas. So just to show you what a dangerous thing this whole thing is, listen to this. If let's say Pinchas killed Zimri after Zimri had already finished the act, like let's say Zimri finished with Cosby, and then Pinchas killed him, Pinchas would have been liable for bloodshed. Pinchas neragalav. Nepach Zimri v'hargol Pinchas ein neragalav. Shari wrote different. Furthermore, if when Pinchas was trying to come and kill Zimri, Zimri turned around and killed Pinchas, Zimri would not be chayiv. Why not? Because Pinchas has the din of a rodef. So just see how fascinating this is. Even though the halacha says that a kanoi is allowed to kill someone who is having relations with an aramis, but again, it's not part of the legal system. It's halacha l'Moshe Misinai to the point, therefore, that the kanoi has the din of a rodef. So if the Jewish man defends himself and kills the kanoi, he's pater. He's pater. It's incredible. So had Zimri turned around and killed Pinchas, Zimri wouldn't be chayiv. Incredible. So the Gemara goes weiter. So we'll say, so remember again, just to give a little bit more context. Remember, when did all of this happen? Balak, the king of Moab, went ahead and hired Bilam to curse the Jewish people. Bilam was unable to successfully curse the people. So what does Bilam do? Bilam says to Balak, listen, lure the Jewish men into immorality. I can't curse them, but immorality is like the Achilles heel of Klal Yisrael, and Achilles heel of man. So what happened? So Moab, essentially the Moabite women, lured the Jewish men into immorality. The tribe that really fell for this the most was Shimon. So what happens? So the Gemara says, so the tribe of Shimon came to their tribal prince Zimri. So he said to Zimri, they're sentencing us to death because we're engaging in immorality, and you're just sitting here doing nothing. You're sitting here being quiet. Ma'asa, what did Zimri do? Zimri gathered 24,000 people, a mob. Gathered 24,000 people. V'halach etzel Cosby, and he went over to Cosby. Now Cosby was a Midianite princess, and he says to her, Amar la, hashmi'ili, have relations with me. Right? So Zimri wanted to make a spectacle. So he says to Cosby, submit to me, have relations with me. Amra lo basmelachani v'chein siva li abi lo tishma ela legodol shebahem. So she said, listen, first of all, Zimri, you seem like a nice guy, but I'm a princess. And my father said I could only have relations with, the melech, the king of the Jewish people. Okay? Amrullah, afu nasi shevet. So Zimri said, listen, I'm a nasi. He was referring to himself in third person. I'm a tribal prince. Not only that, I'm even greater than Moshe. How so? I'm a second-born son or second-born child, and Moshe is a third-born child. So you see, I'm even greater than the leader of the Jewish people. So what does he do? Tafsa biblurisa. So Zimri, literally, he took Cosby by the hair. He brought her before Moshe Rabbeinu. Amrullah ben Amram, Zuasura o Musaras. Moshe, tell me, Is this woman mutter or asur to me? You hear this? Is this woman mutter or asur to me? Vim tomar asura. And if you say that she's asura to me, bas Yisro mihi tira lecha. Who allowed you to marry the daughter of Yisro? You hear this? You hear this incredible chutzpah? So he says to Moshe, tell me, is this woman mutter or asur to me? And by the way, before you say asur, which I know you're going to say, who allowed you to marry Tzipporah? Who allowed you to marry the daughter of Yisro? Incredible. So the Gemara says, Nis'alim ena halacha. Moshe Rabbeinu, in that moment, he couldn't remember what the halacha was. He just could not remember what the halacha was. So go'u kulam b'bechiyah. We'll say first one line at the bottom. So everybody started crying. You have to understand like the enormity of this moment, right? So Zimri is confronting Moshe Rabbeinu, challenging Moshe Rabbeinu's authority. And Moshe Rabbeinu, who's the man who has all the answers all the time, right? Moshe Rabbeinu is the one, he's like the steward of Klal Yisrael. He navigates us through every single crisis, has nothing to say in this moment. Everyone just begins to cry. So what happens? Then what happens? The pasuk says, Pinchas ben Elazar saw. Asks the Gemara, Ma ra'a, what did Pinchas see? Amarav ra'a ma'aseh v'niskar halacha. He saw everything that was happening, and Pinchas remembered the halacha. Amarlo, achi avi abba, literally again, the brother of my grandfather. Because remember again, Pinchas was the son of Elazar, the grandson of Aaron. So Moshe Rabbeinu was his great uncle. So brother of my father's father. You taught us, Moshe Rabbeinu, you taught us when you came down from Har Sinai. Habolas akusis kinoin pogimbo. Moshe, you taught us a halach, literally a halacha Moshe miSinai. You came down from Har Sinai and you taught us the following halacha: that if a man has relations with a non-Jewish woman, you're allowed to kill him. Assuming again, with all the qualifications as well, you catch him in the act, everything else. Amar La Moshe Rabbeinu says, you're right. Now I remember. But he said, Kraina di igarta, the one who reads the letter, Ihu lehavi parvanka. He should be the messenger. In other words, Pinchas, you're the one who remembered the halacha. So therefore, again, you're the one who should carry out the sentence. So Shmuel says, no, something different. Shmuel she'ein chachma ve'ein svuna ve'ein eitza neged Hashem. Shmuel says, Pinchas saw something different. Literally translated, there is no wisdom, there is no understanding, and there is no counsel. Neged Hashem, opposite Hashem. What does that mean? Komakum sheyish chilul Hashem ein cholkin kavod l'rav. So according to this approach, what happened over here is as follows. Pinchas saw everything that was happening. He saw Moshe Rabbeinu forgot the halacha. Pinchas knew the halacha. Pinchas acted without consulting Moshe Rabbeinu. Now, under normal circumstances, we know you can't act. The Talmud can't act without consulting a rabbi. But yet here, Pinchas acted of his own volition. Why? Because when there is chilul Hashem, we do not worry about the kavod to a rabbi. When there's chilul Hashem, we act and we act decisively. Incredible. So the Gemara says, good. Rav Yitzchak, Amar Rav Elazar. So the Gemara says, Pinchas saw that the Malach was coming because there was so much immorality going on. The Malach was just destroying, was killing everyone. So Pinchas got upset. I just want to point out how fascinating this is. Really two different versions of the story. Version number one, right? Well, everyone agrees, Moshe Rabbeinu forgot the halacha. He forgot the halacha. In version number one, Pinchas reminds him of the halacha. Moshe says, yeah, that's the halacha Moshe miSinai. But Moshe says, you remembered it, so you carry it out. In version number two, Moshe forgot the halacha. Pinchas didn't consult him. Pinchas just acted. There was tremendous desecration of God's name occurring, and Pinchas just acted. Because when there's a chilul Hashem, all other conventions and all other frameworks simply go out the window. The Gemara goes weiter. So Pinchas got up and he took a spear. This is very interesting. The Gemara says, Now, the fact that it says Pinchas got up and he took a spear indicates that Pinchas did not have a spear with him. Where was Pinchas? Pinchas was in the beis medrash. And the Gemara says, you see from here that you do not bring weapons into the beis hamikdash. Into the beis medrash. I'm sorry. You do not bring it into the beis medrash. So this is really very interesting. So by the way, this is, if you think about it, what's the logic of not bringing weaponry into the beis medrash? The beis medrash is where we go to go ahead and prolong life. Weapons go ahead and curtail or shorten life. There's a lot of interesting contemporary discussion about this, of course, in Eretz Yisrael. A lot of places about weaponry in a beis medrash, okay, for a different time. In any event, so what did Pinchas do? He got up, he left the beis medrash, he got a spear. Now, Pinchas understood that he was outnumbered. right? He could not frontally go at it with Shevet of Shimon because he was on it. So what did he do? He took the spear, he unscrewed the tip of the spear, and he put it in his clothing. So, and then what did he do? Crazy Gemara. I told you. 82b. Now, so he took the tip of the spear, hid it in his clothing, and he used like the shaft of the spear as a walking stick. So he goes to the area where the Shevet of Shimon is. So listen to this. Pinchas says, why should Shevet Levi be any holier than Shimon? Now, what does that mean? What he was saying is like this. Shimon, you guys look like you're having a great time, right? You're really living it up, enjoying all this debauchery, this immorality. So why should Shevet Levi lose out? I'm from Shevet Levi. Why should we enjoy life any less than you? So they said, wow. Right? The Gemara says, Amar, hinichalo, afu lasos srachav nichnas. They say, great, look at this. Pinchas is here. And clearly he's here to satisfy his own needs as well. Let him in. Nichnas, so the Gemara says, Nichnas, hetiru prushin as hadavar. So they said, let him in. Because after all, again, now even the holiest of people are permitting relations with non-Jewish women. Incredible. Rabbi Yochanan says, Shisha nisim nasulo lePinchas. 6 miracles occurred for Pinchas in this episode. Number 1, Echad, Shahayilo Zimri lifrosh velo pirish. So first of all, Pinchas walks in, and literally Zimri is having relations with Cosby. So one would have thought that, Zimri sees Pinchas, just on the most basic, like normal level. One would have thought that Zimri would have stopped, but he didn't stop. He should have cried out, right? Especially when he saw that Pinchas was getting ready to kill him, but yet he didn't cry out. So as we're going to see, Pinchas killed Zimri and Cosby as they were actually engaged in the act of relations, and the sword pierced them through both of their sexual organs. Another miracle. He lifted them up on the spear, right? And they did not fall off the spear. The malach came and lifted up the lintel, the doorway, because again, Pinchas went out miraculously holding Zimri and Cosby on the spear. So the malach came up and lifted up the door so he can get out. And the malach then again at the same time was also kind of wreaking havoc. He was killing out people who were immoral, and that kept everybody else distracted while Pinchas killed Zimri and Cosby. So Pinchas came and he threw down the bodies of Zimri and Cosby in front of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. So Pinchas says, Ribono shel olam, because of these two people, 24,000 Jews should lose their lives. In other words, Pinchas is coming at HaKadosh Baruch Hu almost with he is a kanoi, with righteous indignation. You're going to hold the whole people accountable because of the actions of these two. Shene Emar, the Gemara says, Veyu amesim emagefa, first one line of Osai, Arba ve'esim alaf, v'hainu dichsiv, this is what it means when it says, Vayamo Pinchas vayipalel. The pasuk says Pinchas stood vayipalel. Now, interestingly enough, Amr Belazar vayispalel lo ne'amar. It doesn't say Pinchas davin ella vayipalel. Now, by the way, the shorish of palal pei lamed lamed means to judge. Melamed kiviyachol sha'asa palilos im kono. So literally again, that Pinchas was judging HaKadosh Baruch Hu. He had tinus. He had rebuke for Hashem. How can you do this to your people? It was two ringleaders, and everyone else is going to be held responsible. So bikshu malachi ashar is the dachfo. So the malachim wanted to push Pinchas down because they thought that Pinchas was being he was being disrespectful. Amar lahen hanichu lo. So they said, HaKadosh Baruch Hu says, leave him alone, leave Pinchas alone. Kanoi ben kanoihu. He is the kanoi, the son of another kanoi. Now ultimately again, who is the kanoi? Mishevet Levi. He's a descendant of Levi, right? Remember again, Levi, Shimon and Levi were the ones, after Dinah was abducted and raped by Shechem, Shimon and Levi went out and killed out all of the men of Shechem. So HaKadosh Baruch Hu says, Pinchas is a kanoi, the son of a kanoi. Meshiv Chima ben Meshiv Chima. He is one who goes ahead and literally, he is one who removes divine wrath, the son of one who removes divine wrath. So that's reference to Aaron. Aaron, in the aftermath of the rebellion of Korach, stopped the plague with the Ketoras. Incredible. So I just want to point out something amazing over here. What do you see? That what the Ribono Shalom cares about more than anything is that we look out for each other, is that we advocate for one another. And HaKadosh Baruch Hu is even willing to excuse other trespasses if he sees that we are motivated by a love for Klal Yisrael. So here, Pinchas is literally acting in a chutzpahdik fashion towards HaKadosh Baruch Hu, to the point that the Malachim are ready to push him down. HaKadosh Baruch Hu says, leave him alone. Leave him alone. Because look what he's being a mechutzaf. He's being a shtickle mechutzaf. A little bit upon him. Maybe he needs a little patch, but understand why he's doing it. Because he loves Klal Yisrael. Because he's pained by what he sees happening to the other Jews. That's what motivated him to act, and that's what's motivating him to speak. The HaKadosh Baruch Hu says, when a Yid has such incredible avas Yisrael, that he cares about his fellow Jews so much that he's willing to even take God to task for the mistreatment of Jews, HaKadosh Baruch Hu says, I'll take it. I'll take it. Leave him alone. He is a kanoi, the son of a kanoi. Just like Levi and Shimon did what they did for the dignity of their sister, just like Aaron did what he did for the dignity of Klal Yisrael. So I know Pinchas is doing what he's doing for the dignity of Klal Yisrael. When you stick up for the dignity of another Jew, when you are there for another Jew, when you're willing to put yourself on the line for another Jew, HaKadosh Baruch Hu says that, I have no tightness, even if it's done with a little bit of chutzpah towards me. Incredible. So the Gemara says, also. So the other tribes began disparaging Pinchas. How so? They said, Re'isim ben puti zeh shepitim avi imo avgadon la'avodas kochavim v'harag nasi mishevet Yisrael. So they started disparaging him. Now remember, so Pinchas's mother was from Yisro. Actually, Rashi says over here, Avi imo Yisro de Elazar Avi Pinchas lakach mi benos Yisro. So Pinchas's mother was one of the daughters of Yisro, from the family of Yisro. So the tribe started disparaging Pinchas. Said, look at this guy. His grandfather was a priest for Avodah Zarah. And this guy, the grandson of a priest of Avodah Zarah, has the chutzpah to kill a tribal prince. Ba'akas of Yachsel. So the pasuk comes and gives the yichus of Pinchas ben Elazar ben Aaron HaKohen. So therefore, again, the pasuk itself gives his yichus and say, listen, be careful what you're talking about. Yeah, his grandfather was from Yisrael, it's true, but he's also the grandson of Aaron HaKohen. HaKadosh Baruch Hu Moshe, hakdem lo shalom. HaKadosh Baruch Hu says to Moshe Rabbeinu, literally again, remember, hineni nosin lo brisi shalom. Hashem gives Pinchas the covenant of peace. So Hashem says to Moshe Rabbeinu, go and extend this covenant of peace, of shalom, to Pinchas. Shnei Amar, Lachein Emar, therefore go tell Pinchas, Hineni nosein loas brisi shalom. See, I give Pinchas the covenant of peace. Now, by the way, just as an aside, it's quite fascinating that out of all the gifts that Pinchas could have gotten, he gets, brisi shalom gets the covenant of peace. What's the pshat? So on a very basic level, it's important to understand that when a person takes a life, even if it's warranted, and even if it's justified, and even if it's a mitzvah, the act of taking life fundamentally changes who and what you are. So HaKadosh Baruch Hu says, I want Pinchas to remain pure and pristine. I don't want him to change as a result. Give him the bris of shalom. Give him the bris of shalom. You know, a person has to take life, they live with that trauma for the rest, even if it's totally justified, right? But they live with that trauma. It changes something in you. You take life, it changes you. HaKadosh Baruch Hu says, Pinchas, because you did this for me, I'm giving you the covenant of peace. That you should find peace in life, that you should find tranquility, that you should not have to live with the guilt of what is, because what you did was 100% correct, 100% warranted. And even though you know that, the trauma is still there. HaKadosh Baruch Hu seeks to soothe the aching soul of Pinchas by giving him bris shalom, the covenant of peace. Incredible. The Gemara says, Uruya kaparazu shetei mechaperes v'olechas li'olam. And Pinchas, you will have this kapara. Ultimately, again, you'll have this bris shalom. And your act, what you did for Klal Yisrael, should be a kapara li'olam. Isn't that incredible? The fact that Pinchas was willing to stand up and do that which was right. The fact that Pinchas was there to defend the honor of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, that zechus will remain for Klal Yisrael for many generations to come. Amar Nachman, Amar Maidich Ziv, Zarzir Masnaim, O Tayish Malach Elkum, Imo Dalam Nelsa Esim. So Gemara says, I'm sorry, let me quote you the pasuk in its entirety. So the pasuk is from Mishlei. Zarzir Masnaim, O Tayish, Umelech Alkum Imo. So what does this mean? So the Gemara says, Dalit Melsa Esim Va'arba Be'ilos, Baal Osa Rasha Osayom. So apparently, Zimri did not just have one act of relations with Tzvi, but he had a lot of active relations. Literally, again, 400, right? 424 active relations. Now, obviously, he didn't have 425. It means that he engaged in a lot of immorality that day. And Pinchas waited until Zimri finished. Well, obviously not until he finished, because remember, he had to catch him in the act, but he waited until he was tired out from multiple acts of relations and was still engaging. He waited for Zimri to have 60 acts of relations. Okay, so apparently again, so Zimri engaged in so many acts of immorality that his testicles shriveled up. Okay, and Cosby was filled with zera, with semen, so much that she became like a saturated field. Amar Rav Kana u'Mosheves beisa Tani Rav Yosef kever shala ama. So again, the Gemara is engaging in a bit of hyperbolic description over here to highlight the idea that the immorality was so rampant. What Zimri and Cosby did is they unleashed a tidal wave of immorality into Klal Yisrael. So they themselves must have engaged in acts of immorality multiple times throughout the day, but they created this tidal wave of immorality all around them. Amar Rav Sheshes, Lo Cosby Shma. In fact, the name of this Midianite princess was not Cosby. What was her name? Shvilanoi Bas Tzur Shma. Shma Cosby. So why do they call her Cosby? Shekizba Ba'avia, because she lied to her father. Because remember, again, her father told her that you can only have relations with the head of the Jewish people. And she had relations with the tribal prince. That Cosby was filled with so much hatred for Klal Yisrael that she said to her father, Cosby, allow this people to be destroyed for me, or by me. Rashi says over here, Cosby, shachut osam al yadi. Let them be slaughtered through me. She's willing to give herself. She knew that it wasn't going to end well, but she was willing to give herself for the destruction of Klal Yisrael. Literally, again, if you look between the reeds, right, between the reeds in the swamp, Rashi says, if you look in the secluded places, that's where you'll find Shvilanoi. Now again, why do people go to secluded places? Because they want to engage in immoral acts. So if you want to find Shvilanoi, look for the secluded place between the reeds. My bai bahadi kalfi dekani Shvilanoi. My bai gaf sali ima. What is she doing there over there between the reeds? What does she do there? She literally prostitutes out her mother. That Shvilanoi was so immoral that she even cast aspersions upon her mother. Incredible. Rabbi Yochanan, Chamisha Shemos Yeshlo Zimri. Yeshlo Zimri, right? Chamisha Shemos Yeshlo. 5 names were given to the tribal prince of Shimon. Zimri, Uben Salo, Shaul, Ben Aknanis, Bishlumiel, Ben Tzuri Shaddai. Zimri, why was he called Zimri? Al Shanasa Beitza Kebeitza Muzeres, because he's so many acts of relations that his testicles shriveled up. Okay. Ben Salu, Al Shehisli Avonos Shal Mishpachto. Then ultimately, again, Ben Salu Rashi says over here, Hisli Garas Sheyisku v'Yisapru Lashon Tisla, that he caused Shayu Ma'arichin Atzma B'Paz, so he caused the iniquities of his families to be spoken about. Shal Mishpachto Shaul Al Shehishu Atzma Dvaravera. He literally let himself out for sinful behavior. Ben Aknanis Al Sha'asa Maisa Kanan. Called Ben Aknanis, why? Because he engaged in actions like Canaanite-like actions. Umashmo, what was actually his name? Shlumiel ben Tzuri Shaddai Shemo. Incredible. Ultimately, again, his name was actually Shlumiel ben Tzuri Shaddai. But I'll just point out something really amazing. If you think about it, right? So his actual name wasn't Cosby, right? It's Zimri, right? Ultimately, again, the Gemara says, right, Zimri was a descriptive name that represented his multiple acts of immorality. But his real name was Shlumiel ben Tzuri Shaddai. So we'll say, if it sounds familiar, it's because, remember again, he's the Nasi of Shimon. We just read his name by Chanukah, which doesn't seem so long ago, the tribal princes. And I'll say, if you think about it, by the way, like, the name itself is so holy. Shlumiel means like Shlomiel, right? I create a sense of peace and spiritual tranquility and harmony with HaKadosh Baruch Hu, right? In other words, I try to live my life in consonance with Hashem so that I have shalom, right? What do we all want in life? I want shalom with Hashem. And as a result, Tzuri Shaddai, Hashem is my rock. So you're talking about a person whose actual name represented so much Kedusha. Shlumiel, I make shalom with HaKadosh Baruch Hu. I live a life in harmony and consonance with Hashem. And as a result, Tzuri Shaddai, Hashem is my rock. He's my anchor. And yet you see something amazing. That someone so holy could literally, again, drop to the depths of depravity. And I must say, this is a lesson we keep seeing over and over and over, which is no matter how holy a person is, right? Like the Mishnah, we spoke about this last week, like the Mishnah Ava says, do not believe in yourself until the day that you die. Because although I might think, so as before also, that certain things are beyond me, they're not. They're not. We're human beings and we're weak. And in one moment, I could be on the highest of high, and the next moment, I could sink to the lowest of depths. Such is the nature of the human condition. So you'll say to yourself, what do I do with this? It's very simple. This is why we have to live life with constant vigilance. This is why we have to understand that everything we do matters. Every action we take matters. Every decision we make matters. Because even the smallest, most innocuous decisions put me on a particular derech, and that derech ultimately leads me some way. And enough bad, small decisions sets me up for that moment when I have to make a really dramatic decision and I make the wrong one. And then suddenly again, I descend to the depths of depravity. You don't usually go from Shlumiel ben Suri Shaddai to Zimri in just a moment. There's a whole bunch of other things that happen along the way. But we're susceptible to sin. We're susceptible to failure. And that's why, again, living life with that constant sense of vigilance. I'm about to do something. What is it going to do? Where is it going to put me? What derech does it lead me on? This constant awareness, constant vigilance. Again, it's not going to protect me from making mistakes because we all make mistakes. But at least if I'm always aware of what direction I'm going on, I put myself on the right derech, I could save myself from those steep falls of life. All right, Tabos say, wow. Okay, Shkach, we'll stop over for today. Tremendous daf. Wishing everyone an incredible day. Looking forward to seeing everyone. Kol Tov and Shkoyach.